So, as I said, this series of webinars is focused on Microsoft Word and our add-in called, which I will come back to. So when we want to boost requirements management capabilities in Word, we are now focusing on how to manage change. I will present myself shortly, and then we will talk about why it's important to manage change. I will also focus on the different aspects of change, which is versions and baselines, where you want to manage a single work product, meaning that you want to manage versions of requirements and a complete set of requirements in this case, to be able to create baselines to compare more requirements against more requirements. I will also conduct a demo at the end where you can see our add-in to Word, and we will end, as I said before, with a Q&A session. Let's start. So, managing change, why? Why is that important? Well, this quote is taken from the newly published Needs and Requirements manuals from INCOSE, where they are discussing a bit why it's important to manage the workflow of information. So I think it's a brilliant text when it comes to talking about change. If you, for instance, change a stakeholder needs or a stakeholder requirement at the top, the goal of something, that could impact the lifecycle concept where you're supposed to manage your system. It could also impact multiple needs, which then could impact multiple design requirements, which then could impact a lot of implementing design output specifications, which then, of course, could impact the integration, verification, production, validation, and so on and so forth. So it's a chain of events that you have to bear in mind. And don't forget that this, of course, will obviously affect also cost and schedule. So as this guy from this Gentry Lee from Jet Propulsion Lab so wisely said, a good systems engineer knows when partial derivative of everything in respect to everything. And of course, this is very nice, but it's impossible for one person to keep track on this chain of events. So we need some help, right? And when it comes to requirements, why should we manage requirement change? Well, of course, we can't think that we are able to write the perfect requirements in the first place, knowing everything about everything. So we need to have an inherent possibility to manage change in requirements. That's quite obvious. And as a project, I need to define how these change will be managed. And that's from a project perspective throughout the duration of the project. And that includes how we define how change will be managed from a configuration management aspect. And when we have a change, that change needs to be analyzed. So we need to be able to do what we call an impact analysis with different stakeholders so that they can review and decide the appropriate action towards the change. So therefore, traceability is of key concern. And that traceability, of course, will happen between multiple sources of work products, and we will come back to traceability when working with Word in a later webinar. But when we look at a single work item, a requirement in this case, we need to manage a change in that perspective, as well as a set of requirements, which many times, especially if we work with Word, can be called a specification then. So when we look at these two different perspectives, we need to manage versions of one requirement, including their attributes, and that's of course over the requirements lifecycle. And then we would like to have baselines, so we can have what is called some kind of stable point in the project endurance, so that we can cover multiple requirements and attributes in one set, so we know where we are. And I will talk about baselines in a short while. These work products, if we think about Word, for instance, you can come up with a new bright idea and you start to write them in Word, and they are quite temporary in the first place. So, and this work product, of course, can evolve to something which you think should be kept under some kind of control. So you might want to add attributes, and the first attribute is probably to add a requirements ID to the requirement, or who is the owner of the requirement, and attributes like that. So that the highly temporary work product, which could be an idea, will evolve to a requirement, will then evolve to something you would like to keep. And soon you have a durable work product which have multiple versions, and you need to keep track on where you are. And that's quite hard when you only use Word. Therefore, we have introduced the add-in, where you can add a set of capabilities to manage variants and versions, and also baselining. So hopefully we will see that Word disappears as it is on its own right, and you will use the Word with the SES add-in capability. So talking a little bit about baselines. From a project perspective, baselines, they give you a control configuration that can be a milestone. For instance, you want to know at this point in time where you are, so you know that all work items are under control and that all decisions are made using the same information for all stakeholders. And that can be at the end of different phases and so on and so forth. And one good thing is, of course, from our perspective, for instance, to prepare a baseline before you do a requirements review, requirements verification, and requirements validation, perhaps using the RQA capability to track requirements quality. That's a good point to take a baseline. And that will mean that you have a very stable starting point for the next phase you are planned to do. And managing baselines and these reference points needs to be controlled. And it's something that the system engineering community need to do in partnership with the project management side. And you need to define what is the life cycle activities and where do you want to prepare these baselines. Because you would like to be able to review the work items from these different perspectives, so that you can resolve any misunderstanding, any problems that you have at that point in time. And it's also a brilliant way of managing a risk and uncertainty. So, of course, again, this needs to be managed alongside with configuration management. So requirements and baselining is not something isolated to requirements. It's something that should be conducted throughout the project. So now we are focusing on Word, but if you're using a multiple set of informations and different sources, you need to baseline all of those at the same point in time. So what is our approach to managing versions and baselines? If you have installed the SES add-in for Word, you will be prompted, or you have the possibility, I should say, to work with configuration management. And from this perspective, this means that you will be able to work with versions of requirements, and you can manage a set of versions of the requirements in a baseline. We also have change requests implemented in SES, which makes it possible to lock the work item, so that you can control who is managing the changes. This is not live and kicking in the SES add-in for Word at this point in time. It will come in later revisions of the software. But what does this mean? Basically, it means that you will have a control change process. So if you have a review comment on Word, perhaps you as an author are not the one who should decide if this is a good comment or not. So you will be able to have a controlled set of steps in order to control the change part of this requirement. So basically what it means that you as an engineer responsible for the document, you will be controlled, or somebody will decide if this document is a durable work product and if you want to enforce a strict change way of working, which means that you will have somebody or a set of people responsible for reviewing and rejecting all the changes, and that will be put into the SES add-in in later versions. So you will have the possibility to work with strict change management as well, working with that will come, as I said. So let's do a demo on our possibility to manage versions and configurations, or baselines, I should say. What I will do here is that I will open a Word file. I will connect to the ontology and be able to open SES and show the content. I will then show you how we manage change and how we manage baselines. So let's start with the presentation, with the video. This document has been used throughout the presentation or the previous webinars, so I guess you have seen it before probably. So I've connected it already, so you can see that we have an open connector to this Word file, and I have many different connectors here, but I will just focus on the Word connector right now. That's the one we will focus on. The information I'm interested in is parsed into the content window of SES, so I can see all the requirements that has been parsed from the document, and you can see here that, of course, they are shown also in the document, so there's a live communication here. So configuration management, I can show versions for this element, and I can create the version. So let's take a look at this. So in order to do that, I have to do some changes, so we will see something happening. So let's change this, for instance, this 7 to, yeah, why not an 8? Yeah, let's change to an 8. And you will see that you have a status marking saying updated in this window. It's not saved yet. Of course, it's updated in the document, and I can also change from the document side. So here I can change from 6 to 7. That will also introduce change, and you see that this is also updated. So you can work from both the Word side and from the content window side of SES add-in. So here we have a couple of changes, and they are marked as updated. And after a while, you get some changes in the document for sure. So perhaps you would like to see the previous versions. So let's take another example, which now doesn't seem to have any changes, but I have a lot of previous versions of this one. You can see that compared to the previous version of this requirement, I have deleted the verification method as an attribute, and I also changed the value from 98.3 to 98. And I have a lot of versions, so I've probably been debating and discussing this requirement. So at some point in time, I might want to revert to another requirement, which means that I want to do some changes. I want to basically change my mind. So of course, I have to select the one I want to change to. And I can revert to that version. Okay, I will take version 6. So now I've changed back. Okay. The value is now 19.5 because that's what we decided. I also put back the value for the verification method. It's not changed in the document. It changed when I actually close this. Now it's updated also in the document. So those will be synchronized. So now I have a couple of changes. So at this point in time, I might want to create the baseline of this set of requirements at this point in time. So I can create the baseline. But of course, I need to save the changes in order to create the baseline. And at this point in time, I don't want to do that because I want to show you the comparison of this set of requirements we're looking at compared to the previous baseline, just for this demonstration. So I've created a couple of baselines before. Let's look at the differences. So here you see the changes that has been made. Now I only see the changes, but I can always untick the box so I see all the requirements and we can start to compare them. You see the right side is the current version and the left side is the version of the baseline. And if I want to drill down, I can of course view changes for this element. And here I can see that previously now I have 8 years for this requirement, and previously it was 6. And if it's a long requirement, of course, I can view changes with markup, so it's easier to see where the changes are applicable. So that's about what I want to show you when it comes to configurations. Baselines. And what will be introduced then is the change management when you want to have a control process. So in this case, it will mean that you will have to propose changes. Change request. You can start a change request where you can suggest a change, and that will be sent to the person who is responsible for this, and they can approve or they can add information and so on and so forth. So you will have a more strict regime for managing change. But that we will show in later presentations for the coming version of this. Okay, that was my presentation. So this is a very short webinar, so now it's time for a Q&A session. So Cecilia, do we have any questions?
Yes, we have a question here. Are versions created automatically when you save the file? And what about the baselines?
That's a good question. Actually, versions of a work product is always created automatically. That's why when you work with this, you will create a lot of versions. But baselines, they are created manually. So you have to decide that now it's time to create the baseline, and then it will be created.
Okay. Can we set a background color to easily identify the changed objects?
Yeah, also a good question. You saw that the work products were marked as updated, and I haven't actually selected that option, but you can select as a viewer that all changes will be shown in the lines. So you have yellow for change, you have green for new, and red for deleted. So that's a possibility. But I don't have that in this video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you add a revision index next to the requirement identifier? For example, REQ 005 version 2.
As an identifier, Well, you could add it as an attribute, of course, but if I understood the question right, you will have to, at this point in time, manually add that identifier.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay, good questions. The next webinar in this series will be me talking about traceability, and I will only be showing traceability between Word files, but that presentation will be done on April the 11th or April the 13th. So if you want to follow us explaining how you can work more precisely with Word, please register for those times. And this is my contact details, and you can always come back to me if you have any further questions. We have a webpage where you can find these webinar presentations and others, and you can also download software, and you can talk to us if you need any more assistance. We're also present on YouTube, on a YouTube channel, where you have a bundle of different long and short presentations on different subjects. And here you can, for instance, find more about knowledge management and traceability and things like that. And if you want to work with modeling tools and such. So please look at that as well. So that was all from us at this point in time. So thank you very much for attending this webinar, and hopefully we will see you soon again. Take care now. Bye-bye.